Okay, I think Livestream broke. I apologize. I've been hoping that this would work. They updated the software. So the last video, I don't know, maybe it broke somewhere in there. She's talking about the funding that was in Dodd-Frank, 35 million for funding attorneys to help people fight foreclosure, and that she made a point, this was in 2010, that all of the robo-signing, all of this information and fraud in the foreclosure process was brought about because they had diligent attorneys discovering this, and evidently the funding has not been appropriated. And so again, the bills will say there's money, and yet it doesn't get to the people. So here's another question, just the very next day, from the Senate committee, asking her about how much of this is a real problem in foreclosures. Listen to what she says.
I'm trying to get a notion of the scope of what we're dealing with here, and so we can understand what we are to fix. But if this is truly a case where you're telling me out of all of the work you've done in this area, that you can bring to mind 3 cases where somebody was sued and foreclosed upon, that's a whole different dynamic for me than if there's 300,000 of them.
Out of all of the cases that I took, out of the hundreds of homeowners that I represented, in virtually every case, I believe the homeowner was not in default when you looked at the surrounding facts.
Would you be able to provide us with some information to back up that statement? You just made a statement out of all of these cases, in virtually every one, the homeowner was not in default. That really, I find that troubling, that there would be people out there foreclosing when the homeowner's not in default, when there are, do you see how that doesn't?
Yes, and that, as a legal services attorney, I had precious little time, and I only took cases where I believed that there was a meritorious defense to the foreclosure. I represented in court hundreds of homeowners. Every single one of those cases, I believed there was a strong defense that would defeat the foreclosure. You can only defeat the foreclosure, ultimately, if you establish that there is not a legal default. It is a widespread problem throughout the country.
And that was in 2010. So I believe that these hearings led to the OCC cease and desist order. They actually looked into it, discovered all of this fraudulent cheating, and told them to stop doing this, stop forging. And of course, we already know the banks didn't stop. So that leads to 2012, the U.S. Consent judgments, U.S. District Court, which didn't stop them. And so we will be looking at later today about the new, the latest and greatest requirements from the OCC and the CFPB for foreclosures. It's like we keep saying it over and over and over. Will the banks follow it? Here we go. Giving the owners the right to sue and to get attorney's fees may be one of the teeth that really does help. But I wanted to bring your attention, before we get right to the facts and the rules and regulations, that Fannie and Freddie had agreed all along to come to Detroit, Michigan, to hear about foreclosures from owners that have been foreclosed. Now, you know, foreclosures in Detroit have been just horrific. It has, you know, really decimated the city. And what's really fascinating is that, you know, they just called a couple days ago and said, oh, we can't make it now. And here, I love this. Fannie and Freddie said, well, we've decided it would be pretty awkward for us to be in the same room in a public event with homeowners who are in litigation against Fannie and Freddie over potential evictions. So we don't want to hear anything. God forbid that we have to face these people that we've been putting out of their homes illegally. And so they're going to hold the hearing. It's today. They're going to be doing it anyway. But this is just truly an example of what the agencies in charge, FHFA, said that they had earlier committed to attending. They're not going to do so. And of course, the spokespeople, the critics, are saying, look, they didn't have to say anything. They just wanted to listen. Just show up so that we can talk to you. It's like victims' rights. Let the victims tell you exactly what they've experienced with your outrageous decisions. And let's never, ever forget that Fannie and Freddie have been just as bad. They've actually led the way in not doing principal reductions and in gaming the system and doing everything. They're still securitizing loans. They're doing everything against the homeowner for the banks. That's just the way it works. Oh, and by the way, they'll sell short. They're going to increase the short sale procedure. So in other words, as soon as an owner indicates they want a short sale, now they'll go get a valuation. The whole process has been designed to drag out for at least several years, again, because of the income that they make on the fees for default. And even Fannie and Freddie, and the banks. So here you go. Now they're going to do it faster. I'm saying keep the owner in the home. Give them a HAMP. Give them a loan mod. Keep them there. Don't just make them sell short. And of course, this article goes on to say, which is exactly the rules they made up. Never, ever, ever forget. These people made these rules up. And one of the rules is, if the owner sells short, they can never own that home again. I don't even know if that's legal, but they do it, and they make sure that that happens, and they cannot be a tenant, God forbid. It's as if it's the owner's fault the market collapsed and they lost their jobs. This is just truly insult to injury, and it drives me bananas because I face this all the time in real estate. Now, I wanted to just bring to you another quick article about behind the mortgage settlements from the housing crisis. And this just talks about the fact that they've paid less, the banks have paid less than the $5.7 billion in cash owed to troubled homeowners under nearly 30 settlements brokered by the government since 2008. They've delayed help to millions of victims of discrimination, and they say shoddy lending. I say toxic, fraudulent lending that epitomized and caused the housing crisis. And so they announced the settlements with big fanfare. Government hails it. It's going to be great. And then nothing really happens. So here you go. This was published just the 19th. So that was yesterday. And so 3.1 has not yet been paid out. 2.6B has been paid out since May 14. And so the fact is, they're going to say whatever it takes and then try to make them do it. They'll just not perform. This is what I call black hole. They just say, sure, sure, sure. And then black hole, they just throw out their commitments and basically just ignore them and wait for someone to force them. And that's why we have to force them. We have to get criminal charges against them. We have to go after them criminally, because then they'll sort of like start to think about, maybe what I was doing wasn't such a good idea after all. But right now, up till now, they've been winning. It's been great. It's really worked for them. It's hurt all the people and our economy. Now, quickly, the New York Attorney General is revising his foreclosure settlement complaint. We're not exactly sure why, but again, he's got that complaint going. He's going to keep it going, I really hope. He's going to push them to perform according to the agreement. See, somebody has to push them, because otherwise they'll sign an agreement, and then they won't perform. And this is truly out of control, a raging fire of disobedience at the very minimum, and fraud at the worst, as you well know. And here I wanted to quote what Eric Holder said recently. This was just filed on the 17th, so that was Friday. Are we too big to fail? Well, here's what Attorney General Eric Holder said, because he made a comment earlier this year that the banks were too big to jail. And of course, he's having to talk about that. And so he says, I made a statement, I guess, in a Senate hearing that I think has been misconstrued. I said it was difficult at times to bring cases against large financial institutions because the potential consequences that they would have on the financial system, Holders said. But let me make it very clear. Okay, let's make him eat these words. Listen to what he says. Let me make it very clear that there is no bank, no institution, no individual who cannot be investigated and prosecuted by the United States Department of Justice. So let's make him do it. How do we make him investigate and prosecute all of the foreclosure mills, all of the fraudulent documents, all of the banks that knowingly participated in this? Because the entities that did this are wholly owned subsidiaries of the banks. They all know this is what they're doing. I think Eric knows too. So let's figure out how to make him eat those words. That would be, if we could do that, that would be wonderful. Because that's where the criminal prosecution should start. It should be federal. It should be nationwide. It should be on every mega bank and every foreclosure company in the country, because every last one of them has participated in this knowingly, willingly, and lucratively. This is where it needs to stop. I wanted to give you just a quick update on Florida. They got their money, the National Mortgage Settlement Funds, and you can look right here to see where it's going. And a little bit is going to some principal reduction, but a lot of it is going to other places. So if you're in Florida, take a look at your bill. If you don't like it, start hounding your local representatives saying, wait a minute. This is supposed to be for people facing foreclosure, not to speed up the rocket docket. And I'm sorry, but that's your state. It's just like I'm in California. It's our state. We have to each fight in our own states. And here, I wanted to show you, though, what's happened in Minnesota. Because here's an article just in March this year, the Homeowner Bill of Rights, which is sounds real similar to California's, can't dual track, single point of contact, must do the loan mod, have the rights to repeal. The person can't appeal a denial. And so in March, here's a nice article written about it's almost dead. It's all but dead. And it has died before reaching the state's full legislature. Now, that was March 12. What a difference 2 months makes. So in May 19 this year, 2 months later, 2 months and 5 days, 7 days, on Sunday, the Minnesota House of Representatives passed HF 1377, the Minnesota Homeowners Bill of Rights, on a bipartisan vote of 123-0. The bill now heads to the mayor's or the governor's desk for signature. A companion version passed in the Senate Thursday evening. They've got their Homeowner Bill of Rights in Minnesota. 2 months. So it pays to push and to individually contact legislators. We're grateful to Rose McGee and other homeowners who courageously told their stories and who, along with the members of faith, labor, and community organizations, lifted up support for this bipartisan legislation in communities throughout Minnesota and at the legislature. We're incredibly grateful for the leadership, so they found a rep that was going to really push and champion the bill. Melissa Hartman for her perseverance to pass the Homeowner Bill of Rights with significant provisions to protect homeowners this year. They've already lost over just about 150,000 homes to foreclosure in Minnesota. This is a pandemic everywhere in the country, regardless of what the paper says and what the news media says and how things are perfect. No, they're not. Now, here's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Rules establish strong protections for homeowners facing foreclosure. And I want to take the last few minutes of our show today to talk about the fact that they're issuing new rules, strong protections for homeowners facing foreclosure. They're supposed to, and the reason I say supposed to is because, as you well know, who's going to make them do it? The homeowner, the Attorney General, CFPB. Who's going to actually take these banks to court and whack them? And then if these agencies take the banks to court, then the agencies get a payment, but the homeowners still get left out. So the whole thing is, has a real big loophole in it. But the idea is that it's supposed to prohibit the borrowers from costly surprises and being run around by the servicers. Single point of contact, that's typical, no dual tracking, do the loan mod, meet with them face to face, do loan mediation first. So it talks about these strong protections. Restricted dual tracking. In other words, they can't do both. If they're going to do a loan mod, they have to stop whatever they're doing on every other basis. Notification of foreclosure alternatives. Direct and ongoing access to servicing personnel. They have to review fairly. Well, that's pretty amazing considering the OCC can't make them review fairly. How in the world are you and I or the CFPB supposed to do it? It sounds so good on paper, but the weakness is, where's the teeth? Where's the teeth? And then there's no foreclosure sale until all other alternatives are considered. So they must consider and respond to a borrower's application for a loan modification, and they cannot foreclose on a property if the borrower and servicer have come to a loss mitigation agreement. Now, see, okay, so it reminds me of the case last week. It says, unless the borrower fails to perform. Okay, so here's a lady last week. She had a loan mod approval from GMAC, and then GMAC sells the servicing rights, and Ocwen says, we're not going to do that. Forget it. Basically, screw you. We're going to just take the house in foreclosure. So what about that? To me, that's a huge surprise. And if she complained to the CFPB, what would actually happen? She'd be like a trial case. Who knows what would actually happen? And you and I are fairly cynical these days, I'm afraid. Now, I did want to bring to your attention the minimum standards. This is the OCC. Remember last week we talked about how the article stated that Wells and Citibank in particular had halted foreclosures, although Occupy Bernal informed me that they seemed to ramp up Wells ramped up foreclosures in San Francisco. So, nevertheless, it was referred to the OCC rules for foreclosure. And that was causing banks to take a step back and to review these rules and say, now what? Here are the rules. And I want you to have this link. I want you to look at what I've highlighted and listen as I chat, because this is going to affect each and every person that is either in foreclosure, facing foreclosure, thinking about stopping to make their loans, knowing that this might be something coming down the road. Pay close attention, because these are the guidelines, and you can use these now in your OCC complaints. You could add them in your qualified written request letter. You could actually add them in those emergency faxes over to the legal department of the foreclosure trustee when you're trying to postpone an auction. If you're looking at your auction next week, copy this, highlight these, fax them over there, and say, I don't think so, because here it is. This purpose of these OCC rules is for minimum standards for the handling and prioritization of borrower files that are subject to imminent, within 60 days, scheduled foreclosure sales. And the purpose of the guidance is to ensure that borrowers will not lose their homes without their files receiving pre-foreclosure sale reviews conducted under the standards of this guidance. So here's the highlighted standards of this guidance. They should review and the validation standards to determine whether a scheduled foreclosure sale should be postponed, suspended, or canceled due to critical foreclosure defects in the borrower's file. If you have any one of those items, remember those items? Here, I'm going to show them real quick on the page. This is the foreclosure violations review. If you have any one of these, false notarization, a forged signature, someone, and you can easily find that, like from my website. If the assignment was recorded after the notice of default, that the servicer is a assignee or a beneficiary, or it's an impossible beneficiary, like the trustee of a mortgage-backed security, or it uses the word attorney in fact, and there was no attorney in fact filed in your county or with that document, it's fake. Fake agency designation, whenever you just say as agent, They're all fake. It's all a violation of agency law. Fake or missing trustee substitution if you're in a non-judicial state. Assignments are filed after the MBS trust cutoff date, and every last one of them are. Okay, all of the assignments on securitized loans were filed after, if you have one, had to be filed after the mortgage-backed security trust cutoff date. Boom, illegal. Defect, 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 defect. And so, quote whichever one, if you use a defunct lender, they're still talking about One West or IndyMac Bank in your documents. Give me a break, because they're long gone. There is, to quote them or to refer to them is just fake. They just make that stuff up, and that's a defect. It's defective. Any violations that were recorded after 413, that's the OCC cease and desist, it violates that rule, it's a defect. Any violations that were recorded after 4/4/2012, violating the U.S. District Court judgment, defect. Defect, it violates those laws. So quote those defects in your document with your OCC complaint, because these are critical foreclosure defects. This is the minimum review criteria, are intended to ensure a level of consistency across servicers. The fact is, if every owner that was facing foreclosure looked at their documents with this understanding, looked at these rules, and wrote down, this is a critical foreclosure defect according to the OCC rules, then it would be consistent across servicers, because all foreclosures would stop. They could not move forward if they honor this. So we now know that every foreclosure in the country that's happening after today, the 20th, well, actually, this was put into place some time ago, April 19. So every foreclosure after April 19 is illegal and wrongful. So pass this out. Help your family, friends, and neighbors understand this. Pass this out to your churches, to all the organizations, your union. What groups do you belong to? Any and every group that you belong to, pass it out. In fact, I'm now going to be passing it out to the agents. I have been waiting. I'm a broker. I have hundreds of people that are connected to me on LinkedIn, and I'm ready to step up. I will step up and say, all of these foreclosures are defective. They're all wrongful. Tell your family, friends, and neighbors. And oh yeah, by the way, go after the ones they took from you, because so many agents, we saw that agent last week. She had 7 homes. She's down to the last one. She's lost all of them except the last one, her home, and she's hoping to keep it. And this is a way she might have some potential to do that. So servicers that currently apply more than these minimum standards, I don't even know who that would be, they are expected to continue to do so. And these standards are not intended to incorporate the final rules amending Reg X and Reg Z from the CFPB. And just for your information, here's the link. This is a CFPB. Here's the final rules, Reg E, Reg Z. So you can actually look them up and familiarize yourself with those, and Reg X. But the OCC expects that all servicers will undertake appropriate action in a timely manner to ensure their practices will be compliant. Okay, so the OCC expects. Yay. That's real helpful. So here's what we have to find out, and this is what I recommend. If you're filing an OCC complaint, you state that we understand that the OCC expects all servicers will undertake appropriate action. What are you going to do when my servicer doesn't? My servicer has not, did not, will not, whichever applies, take this action. What are you going to do about it, OCC? Require them to start answering. We need to start demanding answers from these regulators, which we already know are bought off and ruled by the banks. It's no surprise, but let's keep poking, because when you send the statement, just try to pretend you're in a court of law. Even if you're not, you're sending a letter, I'm demanding these answers. When you get no answer, weird answers, something says, oh, but they are, some lying answer, you have it at least in writing. Get it in writing. That's what I recommend. And of course, the servicer will promptly determine if the borrower is currently in active loss mitigation, and if they are, like if you're in hemp or a harp or something, that they'll stop the foreclosure. And so here are the minimum pre-foreclosure sale review standards. Is the loan default status accurate? Does the servicer have and can demonstrate the appropriate legal authority to foreclose? In other words, documented assignments, note endorsements, and other necessary legal documentation as applicable. And I want to remind you of the power of the assignment that fakes the shift of the beneficial rights from some bank to the trustee of a mortgage-backed security. I'd say probably 50%, that was my research, about 50% of all of the foreclosures did that. That is completely illegal. They have no legal authority, and if they claim to, they've lied about it. They've lied about their authority. It's not like they don't have standing. That's one of the articles. I'm hoping I can get an attorney to talk about it tomorrow with me. But if not, I'm going to bring these lawsuits on that have been wins for homeowners. We're going to do that tomorrow. And one of the issues, one of the wins for the person was the fact is the servicer did not transfer, did not sell and assign the loan, the ownership in that loan to the mortgage-backed trust correctly. We all know they didn't. They've used this in a lawsuit, and that has stopped the foreclosure at this point for that borrower. So this is really, really important, and I think you can state this in fairly simple language, that the transfer comes, and I've just listened to my, I think it's number 6, the analyzing your foreclosure documents worksheet. Look at the worksheet because it clearly states how that works. Listen to my training. I think it's in particular the second little short video on that, and then write something up to the OCC, and let's start showing them you can't pull the wool over our eyes anymore. Stop this nonsense. Stop foreclosing because you have no legal rights. Number 3, have required foreclosure notices or other required communications been sent in a timely manner? Has the servicer taken all steps necessary to confirm whether all of the borrowers are entitled to protections under the Service Members Civil Relief Act? Several of you have contacted me. You're a vet. You've been a service member. Just start screaming. Start screaming at your elected official, local official, or a state election official. They will help you. They will get you some help. I know they will. There's got to be some kind of an attorney that can help you get your rights for this kind of violation. They've violated so many of our service members. It's truly an outrage. While they're over getting shot at, they're stealing their homes here. It is just completely wrong. And then, of course, if they're in bankruptcy, they were going down the servicer rules, determine whether the loan is in loss mitigation or other kind of retention review. Is the borrower currently in an active trial, loss mitigation? And remember, all of those trial payments never seem to go, they're never recorded against your loan. They go into an offshore slush fund. So it really begs the question, well, should I do the trial loan mod? And this is really a personal thing. You have to decide for yourself. Many people do because they are so afraid. They've been so extorted by these servicers that they extort money out of them in the guise that they're going to keep the house. And often, we already know from experience, most of these end up losing the house anyway. They get a loan mod, somebody else says it doesn't apply and takes the house in foreclosure. It's just truly, if you're a borrower, you lose. The servicer wins. And how the OCC is going to stop this, I don't know. I'd love to know. They expect the banks to do it, so then when the banks don't, now what? I mean, now you have the New York Attorney General saying, well, I guess I got to sue them. The OCC isn't going to do anything. And that's the trouble. And so you have to determine whether the servicer has accepted any payment from the borrower in the preceding 60 days. If so, did the servicer clearly communicate to the borrower that he or she is neither in nor being considered for a loss mitigation program, and that the bank's acceptance of the payment in no way affected the status of the foreclosure that is proceeding? So if you've been considering doing payments or you've sent payments, you look at these rules and you see if they apply. And if they apply, you file an OCC complaint right now. Get online. It's real quick. I've got the link there under the foreclosure defense on my homepage, the web page, foreclosure defense web page. I think it's item number 1, OCC complaint. Start there. And then right at the bottom of that one is a CFPB website. So if you have a servicer that is not one of the mega banks, go to the CFPB. And then, was the borrower solicited for or offered a HAMP, any kind of a loan? Was a fully executed loan mod app submitted by the borrower? And of course, people tell me they submit them like 20 times, and somehow they can't be held. So this is just, sounds great. These are the rules. These were put in effect now by the OCC just a month ago. So take them, review them, see if they apply, use them, put them in your complaints, put them in your qualified written requests, send them, and at the very minimum, hopefully this will delay and stay. It will stave off a foreclosure for you. Because at this point, until we can get something happening at the official level, criminal charges, eminent domaining these contracts to clear all the clouds, something, I'm not sure how we're going to resolve this, because the bottom line is, because all of these foreclosures were done with fraudulent documents, they have clouded all the titles of millions of properties in this country. Many of these foreclosures have been sold to other innocent parties where they've had to sign off all right of going back after the bank, however, not for fraud. So regardless of everything that you've signed, if you've bought a foreclosure property, an REO, you can go back for fraud, because you cannot have a contract that protects someone from fraud lawsuit. And so that's where I expect this to go as the people fighting foreclosures get more and more grip on, and the news makes it more and more plain to everybody that this was complete fraud and has clouded all the titles. The only way I know of that titles can be cleared is through the eminent domain process. And so how that works, I don't know. We're still trying to explore it. It's in the back of my mind. Most entities, government entities, have been real reluctant to even really consider eminent domaining the loans. But I do believe at some point in time we'll probably need that, if we can still keep our houses. If we can't stop the banks, they're just going to take all the houses, and you and I are just going to be renters and poor and kicked out on the street under the bridge. And I really hope that's not true. Nevertheless, this is the law. I wanted to get it out here. I wanted to go over it, take some time, have you look at it, pay attention to it, because this might be something that you could use to protect your home. I really hope so. And I've worked real hard. I just updated it this morning before the live stream. This is the latest and greatest. Each time I post a show, I'm going to move this post to the top of the list. So this always shows up on live stream at the very top of the list. I'm calling it the library. It has some key videos. I've now added here the anti-foreclosure ordinance that O'Brien did, both his speech at the Lynn City Council about the times during that YouTube, and then the ordinance fact sheet and the ordinance, so that you can quickly just copy and paste. You can just see, just like this. You can copy that. If you go Control C, you go over to your email, Control V, all those links are just right there, just like that. So send them out to all of your elected officials. Here's some interesting mainstream media links that I thought would be helpful to pass out, because these are things that come from mainstream media people might be more willing to listen to. And then here are all the shows, most current on top, All the links are live, and on each show down, I haven't done Jan or February, but March, April, and May, I've gotten a little short, a bit.ly link for each show. So if you scroll down and you say, oh, I really want to watch this one on May 7, you can just click right there. It shoots you right to the show. You don't have to start hunting through that big long list of all these shows. It's way too confusing. And I've done this, partly for me, but mostly for you, and mostly for the effort to get us all on the same page so that we can not spend a whole lot of time trying to find stuff. We can spend our time trying to get it out and share it with the public. And then for everybody that is really looking at the laws, this link was sent to me, so I'm going to share it. This is a table. It's several pages, and it connects a list. It's a table that connects the USC code for regulations codified in the Code of Federal Regulations. And it also includes statutory citations, which are noted as being interpreted or applied by those regulations. And the table's divided into 4 segments: United States Code, United States statutes at large, public law citations, and presidential document citations. And this is what it looks like. And it's just page after page after page. This is what I call a translation table. So if this is helpful to you, make this a favorite. This is from the website, and it's gpo.gov, and it's a table of information. So if you're trying to connect codes back and forth, it can be fairly complicated. And I just wanted to get that out there for our researchers that are watching. And thank you so much for researching. Thank you so much for sharing everything today, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm really sorry it looks like live stream broke. I'm really disappointed because I had really hoped that we were past that. So I'll probably have to go back to the way I was doing it before. Anyway, that's it for today. And I'm telling you, the rest of this week, I really want to focus on wins and how we're winning and arguments that are making it win and what people are doing, because I know everybody's situation is different, but some of the arguments are all the same. This is why I wanted to hone in on the OCC today, because those arguments are winning in court. So until tomorrow, let's bugger the bankers and the politicians and bureaucrats. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget the actions.
System is bent and the money's all spent. We're banded from every direction. The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax.
With nary a moment's reflection. When it's bronze, there's muck, and they don't give an arse, 'cause we're programmed against insurrection. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you. Now all you good people with passion to vent, don't give up the struggle for justice. my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent